This video is sponsored by Brilliant.org. The first 200 people to click the link in the description will get 20% off the annual premium subscription. Hey Wisecrack, Jared here. Today we're talking about the internet's favorite bee-based film, Bee Movie. While it's mostly remembered as source material for YouTube remixes, Jerry Seinfeld's animated debut has a lot to teach us about economic theory. Bee Movie is a bizarre analysis of both the shortcomings and successes of capitalism, and strongly mirrors one of the foundational texts of modern economics, which, believe it or not, is also about bees. Welcome to this Wisecrack edition on the economics of Bee Movie. And as always, spoilers ahead for a 2007 computer animated comedy about bees. First, a quick recap. Protagonist Barry B. Benson is disillusioned by the prospect of a life of menial labor in the hive.
You'll be happy to know that bees as a species haven't had one day off in 27 million years. Whew.
So you'll just work us to death?
We'll sure try.
While exploring the outside world, Barry falls in love with a florist named Vanessa and discovers that humans are exploiting millions of bees for their honey. Barry successfully sues the human race for exclusive rights to said honey, but soon after that, the world's plant population begins to die off. With the life of the planet at stake, it's up to Barry and Vanessa to save the day. What drives Bee Movie's plot forward is, essentially, Barry's aversion to manual labor. It's what drives him out of the hive in the first place.
I'm going out.
Out? Out where?
Out there!
Oh no!
I have to, before I go to work for the rest of my life.
And when the court eventually decides in favor of the bees, he reveals his underlying motivation for filing the lawsuit.
Vanessa, do you know what this means? All the honey is finally gonna belong to the bees. Now we won't have to work so hard all the time.
Yet this is hardly the way that Barry frames his argument for the jury. Instead, he offers a Marxist critique of industrial honey production. Specifically, Barry argues that because their honey is taken and sold to profit the honey farm owners, bees as a species are being alienated from the product of their labor, divorced from what Marx referred to as their species being. In a nutshell, Marx believed that one of the fundamental drives of human nature is to labor and to appreciate the objects of that labor. One of the major sins of capitalism is that it distances people from the results of their hard work, leaving them without a sense of purpose and accomplishment. Barry extends this idea from humans to bees, arguing that in stealing their honey, the farmers are taking more from the bees than just material goods.
And what I'm hoping is that after this is all over, you'll see how by taking our honey, you're not only taking away everything we have, but everything we are.
Barry's argument likens the bee-human relationship to that between the exploited proletariat and the owners of capital.
They make the honey, and we make the money.
Because the capitalist mode of production alienates the domesticated bees from honey, the object of their labor, the bees are alienated from their essential bee-ness, that sense of themselves as a species that makes their lives meaningful.
Is this what nature intended for us? To be forcibly addicted to these smoke machines in man-made wooden slat work camps? Living out our lives as honey slaves to the white man?
And for good measure, the film throws in a subtle reference to Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged to really drive home the capitalist nature of the hive. Barry successfully argues that the bees' natural right to their labor has been violated, putting him in direct opposition to Leighton T. Montgomery, the lawyer for the defense whose rotundity is not unlike the depiction of the bourgeois in Soviet propaganda.
This is an unholy perversion of the balance of nature, Benson. You'll regret this.
And in a surprising move for an animated family film, it turns out that the ostensible villain might actually have a point. With the court case in the bag, Barry sets about reforming the system in the bees' favor. But things don't work out the way he'd hoped. With the bees' demand for honey satisfied by an influx of more product than they could possibly use, the bees have no incentive to work. The effect is twofold. For one thing, the bees, and Barry's best friend Adam in particular, lose their sense of purpose, despite Barry's claim that it was the alienation of their labor that deprived them of purpose in the first place.
I don't understand why they're not happy. We have so much now. I thought their lives would be better. They're doing nothing.
By providing the bees with a practically infinite honey supply, Barry has inadvertently replaced one crisis with another. Under these new conditions, with no need to labor, the bees are distanced in an entirely new way from their species being. Under the previous system, the bees were alienated from the object of their labor, but at least they had the labor itself, a set of tasks that gives their lives meaning and structure. The sudden surplus of honey eliminates the need for labor entirely, leaving them feeling bored and depressed.
I was excited to be a part of making it. This was my new desk. This was my new job. I wanted to do it really well, and now I can't.
What's worse, due to the lack of pollination, the world's plant population begins to die out, putting the entire planet, and in particular Vanessa's flower shop, at risk. So, how is Barry going to save himself and the rest of the world from this mess? Oddly enough, he gets out the same way he got in, by being a bee-gotistical jerk. Barry decides to take action, not because his fellow bees are down in the dumps or because the ecosystem is collapsing, but because Vanessa gets mad at him.
I've ruined the planet, and I wanted to help you with your flower shop. Instead, I've made it worse.
Actually, it's completely closed down.
The threat of losing Vanessa is what finally gives Barry the kick in the no pants he needs to do something about the problems he's created. His scheme to repollinate the plants of Central Park is born not out of a sense of altruism, but out of Barry's selfish desire to engage in cross-species pollination. In B-Movie, self-centered actions can and do promote the greater good of society. Barry's initial desire to escape work saves the bees from exploitative labor practices. When his initial solution to that problem turns out to be an overcorrection, Barry saves the day not by making personal sacrifices, but by trying even harder to fulfill his own wishes. While it's probably a coincidence, it's worth noting that the idea that individual acts of selfishness could lead to collective benefits was proposed more than 300 years ago in another bee thing. The Fable of the Bees, or Private Vice's Public Benefits, written by economist Bernard Mandeville. In the similar but distinct story, a prosperous beehive lives in comfort and ease until someone decides to rid it of vice. At this point, believing even comfort to be a sin, thousands of bees die as the prosperity of the hive collapses. Mandeville thus argued that societal progress is not the result of people putting aside their wants and needs for the good of all. Instead, collectively useful things like laws, government institutions, and cultural practices come about when individuals selfishly pursue their own wants, needs, and even straight-up vices. According to Mandeville, the idea of a purely virtuous society is a vain utopia, because to him, all public efforts at societal improvement are rooted in the selfish desire to be liked and supported by one's fellow citizens. Now, while some scholars believe that Mandeville wrote the fable as a satire or criticism of contemporary mercantilists who believed in the inherent morality of making money, this model influenced many economic thinkers, notably Scottish economist and invisible hand dude Adam Smith. Barry B. Benson is a textbook case of what Mandeville refers to as the skillful politician, an individual who channels the private vices of individuals into large-scale social change. Barry wants to get Central Park repollinated in no small part because it will make his lady friend happy. He gets the bees to undertake this massive task, not by appealing to their better nature and asking them to save the planet, but by asking them to advance their own interests.
If we're gonna survive as a species, this is our moment! So what do you all say? Are we gonna be bees? Or just Museum of Natural History keychains?
He promises the chance to ensure their own survival and reclaim the sense of purpose they lost in the wake of the lawsuit. Humanity doesn't even get a passing mention. Yet, in spite of the bees' selfish motivations, the whole planet benefits from their actions. Private vice has created public benefit. And let's not miss the fact that Barry repollinates Vanessa's flowers first. B-Movie paints private vice as a kind of accelerating force, the kickstart needed to push society out of practices that are unjust or unworkable and toward a more sustainable model. While there may be bumps along the way, the selfish pursuit of one's own desires will ultimately lead to changes which benefit the system as a whole. Which is why a movie that started off with a Marxist critique of capitalism ultimately doubles back on that argument to reaffirm the usefulness of the capitalist system with a few caveats. Barry, having successfully avoided menial labor by becoming a lawyer, shares an office space with Vanessa, from which they sell bee-approved honey.
Would you like some honey with that? Sure. It is bee approved.
This may seem like a throwaway line, but it actually indicates a significant change to the prevailing capitalist system. Whereas the bees working on industrial honey farms were once completely exploited, they now have been more fully integrated into the capitalist machine, such that they have a degree of regulatory power over the sale and distribution of honey. This is the film's way of rejecting the laissez-faire capitalism of the honey farmers in favor of a more benign market economy. The movie doesn't specify how honey becomes bee approved, but it seems safe to say that the bees now have a seat at the table, an ability to influence honey production, if not to control it directly. In any event, both humans and bees still pursue the fulfillment of their own private vices, but minor checks and balances prevent massive exploitation of the little guys. So is Barry a failed Leon Trotsky or a successful Jordan Belfort? Is the economic system shown in Bee Movie as robust as the way they portray the science of bees? Well, since I'm more of a philosophy nerd, I couldn't really tell you. You see, when it comes to all things science related, my formal training ends with high school physics. Luckily, with Brilliant.org's assortment of well-curated sequences of problems, I can finally fill in the cracks of my science education in a fun arcade-style way. From courses on how to work out your logic skills to a 5-part course on artificial neural networks, Brilliant.org's puzzles can literally teach you about rocket science without putting you to sleep. Not gonna name names, but if physics were that fun, Mr. Nebbins, I might have piled on some science classes back in my college years. If you want to experience math and science the fun way, then go to brilliant.org/wisecrack and sign up for free. And also, the first 200 people that go to that link will get 20% off the annual premium subscription. Alright, that's it for me guys. Catch y'all later. Peace.